I can say that the Lord started on me at a young age, you know what I mean? But now I look back, I realize that. At the time, of course, I didn't have a clue, and I didn't know that for many years. But now that I'm 72 now, and I look back at my life, I realize God was beginning, He's a God of preparation. And I can remember, my cousin and I laying out in the yard one night and seeing all the stars, and we both started talking about God. And, those things are an accident. And you realize that God is drawing you even at a young age. Then I had a car wreck one time, and I went down off a mountain. I think it was 65 foot down off the mountain, tumbling, and I thought that was the end of it for a while. But I was talking to God pretty straightforward, and pretty serious to God, and saying, "Lord, save me out of this." And it was really a cool experience because, I wasn't a Christian. I didn't know anything about the Lord hardly at all, but I knew without doubt that God was hearing me, and He's going to save me from that car wreck. That was pretty cool. And I came out of that car wreck without a scratch. So that was an experience with God, even though I didn't know the Lord. And then, of course, later on, I left home when I was about 15 years old. And I was out on my own for about 5 years. And one time I went to work on a ranch. And when I first went there was several hands there, but come fall, I was the only hand left on the ranch. And I was the only guy in the bunkhouse. I mean, this is Wyoming, and you know what I mean? It's pretty lonesome out there. And I'd be out busy all day by my own, and then I'd come in at night and be by myself. And I really got lonesome one night. And I prayed. I don't know why I prayed. I just felt led to pray. And I said, "Lord," I think I need to go out to Oregon and see my mom, because I had a guilt trip because I hadn't seen her for years, and I felt like I needed to. And Lord, while I'm out there, I want you to give me a wife, and if you give me a wife, I'll serve you. And cut a long story short, I went to Oregon, met my wife, got married, but I didn't keep my promise. It was the same when I forgot to tell you, when I went down off that mountain in the car, I was telling God, "You save me from this, I'll serve you." And after the car wreck, of course, I forgot my promise, foxhole type thing, Same with my wife. I wouldn't keep my word, but what it helped do is give me more conscience of my need, to get right with God. I had that guilt on me. It was terrible guilt. And so that guilt was there, and then the Mormons had helped put some guilt on me too. They had taught me at 12 years old. We were baptized, Mom and Paul and I, in the Mormon church, and they had tried to get me to memorize. Not to memorize, but to promise I'd keep this word of wisdom. And I didn't much want to sign the thing, but I ended up signing it. And then, of course, it's just a thing telling you'll promise to do this and not do the other. Well, of course, I started doing all the don'ts and not doing the do's, and feeling real guilty about it. And anyway, so I wouldn't go to the church anymore because I felt like a hypocrite. And now I realized God was using all that, And so carrying that kind of hypocrisy and guilt around for years. And then, of course, when I was out working in the oil fields and ranches and stuff, I was drinking a lot and partying and stuff like this. So there was a lot of guilt. And, then the Lord brought Orville Tadlock into our lives. My wife had known Orville. She had went to high school with him. He'd come from a rough home. I had also known Orville, but I knew him working in the woods with him. He's a real hard worker. I liked him, but I always thought he was a little too proud and arrogant. But I liked the guy. He was a tough rascal. He was a real go-getter, but he drank a lot and stuff like that. So, but he got saved, and we heard he got religious. Now I sure. But one day he showed up to the house. He had a Bible in his hand. And I'm telling you what, he wasn't the same guy anymore. His colorful language had changed totally. That shocked me, He wasn't cussing, and he was real straightforward, And he gave his testimony. He shared with us how he'd gotten saved, and they said to me, he says, "Jim," he says, "You're a Mormon, right?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well," he says, "you're going to go to hell." Well, I thought, who's he to come here on my place, and tell me that I'm going to hell? And I thought, I'll just throw him off my property. But Robert, I couldn't do it because I knew he's more than likely telling me the truth, and I'd better listen. And that's kind of the way it started out. And then every time he'd come, I'd think, oh, here's that rascal again. Half me wanted him to come again, the other half didn't. So I had this fight going on within me. And of course, the Lord gave him a lot of wisdom. He shared powerful testimonies with us. And it was the Lord's plan to give us a lot of snow that year, so I couldn't work on my job. And so I was stuck at home. And instead of reading Lewis L'Amour, I was reading my Bible.
What year was that?
I think that was 1969, yeah. 1969, the winter of 69, it really snowed. And, prior to this, I'd been confused by the Mormons. And I had realized that they didn't have the answer. So I thought, well, what religion does? And I thought, well, I'll study all religions and I'll find out. And I was thinking about that, and I realized, what if you chose the wrong one, After what, that wouldn't be too good. And that kind of frightened me, and I thought, wow. So I was getting really concerned. And then I had a comforting thought. I thought, well, I believe the Bible. I think it's good. I know it's right. I'll just read it, and I'll find the answers. And I think that's probably one of the best decisions I ever made. But anyway, I started reading the Bible, of course. I wanted to find the right religion, right? Well, I didn't find any religion in there. I didn't find anything about Mormons or Catholics or Buddhists or none of that stuff. But of course, as you know, I found the person of the Lord Jesus Christ. And I really, right away, fell in love with him. I mean, this guy, he was like different than any man I'd ever met. He was so honest, he was so open, he was straightforward, he was full of love and compassion for the sick and the poor, and he healed everybody he saw almost, and I just really liked his attitude, the way he treated the Pharisees and the hypocrites and stuff, and of course the way he spoke to the ones that brought the adulterous woman to him and all this, and how he told her to go and sin no more. And that message really touched my heart. And so I fell in love with Jesus. Yeah, and then we were going to Orville had wanted to go to Bible school, and he'd gone down to Monoma, as it's called, there in Oregon, and tried to get into the school there, and because he didn't have a high school education, they wouldn't let him in. So he got kind of disappointed by that. So he came back and said, well, God never said you had to go to Bible school to preach, because he had a real desire to preach. So he decided to start preaching, and he'd go up and down the McKenzie River there where we lived, and just talking to different people he knew, and he'd even stop people he didn't know, and he just started preaching to everybody, and it was pretty awesome. Then he was praying for a church, and there was a logger that we had both worked for before, a Roseboro Lumber Company, and he was talking to the superintendent of that lumber company, and he found out Orville wanted a church. He said, hey, I have a church up there in the camp. He says, you're welcome to use that. So Orville accepted it and set up. The church was kind of falling off the foundations, had to be set up and stuff. But anyway, he started preaching in that church. And there was four families going. Then Francine and I were invited to come up. And so we went. And of course, he preached with real conviction and power of the Spirit. And then after the meeting, they invited us, one of the families invited us for dinner for the next Sunday. Well, you don't just go to dinner, you feel guilty, you felt like you had to go to church again. So we went to church. And they did that about 3 times in a row on us, tricking us, they weren't really tricking us. But anyway, they invited us to dinner, and then we'd go to dinner. And so we kept going back. And about the fifth time, he was preaching that real conviction, and I didn't think my wife was paying much attention. I didn't know I thought she probably doesn't want to get saved, but I know I have to, and I knew I had to surrender. So I surrendered my life to Christ, and my wife beat me down the aisle there to pray and receive the Lord, and we both got saved in the same day. That was pretty awesome.
There was
That was in a little town called Finn Rock on the McKenzie River there in Oregon, just up from Leeburg where we lived. And we were both saved that day. It was pretty awesome. When I went up forward, that burden of sin came off me, Robert. It was so awesome. And, of course, the tears just flowed down my face. And, proud loggers don't cry in public, So I ran out of the church. I was so ashamed.
What year was that?
And what's that?
What year was that?
I think it was 1969, yeah. And we, anyway, that was pretty embarrassing, to shed all those tears in public. But I came back in, and it was good. So that's when we got saved. And then right after that, of course, the Lord started really ministering His Word to me and changing my mind on a lot of things, reforming me, teaching me.